Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome. And if you've just come from watching Global Atheist News, the show that precedes this, thank you for watching that too. Now, FreeThought Hour is a Q&A guest show. And last week, my guest had a bit of a disaster. It's Howard Burman, president of Atheist Alliance International. I'm getting mixed up because I'm a president of a similar sounding organization. This is Howard of Atheist Alliance International. And fortunately, he survived his experience last week. Here he is. Hello, Howard. How the devil are you?
I'm doing great, John. And you?
Yes, I'm fine too, even if I'm getting a bit tongue-tied. It's confusing to me because, of course, I used to be a member of the board of AAI,
right?
And I'm now the president of Atheism UK. So I just haven't come to terms with that yet. So tell me about your hair-raising event last week. Obviously, you survived it, and it looks as though your house survived it, but what happened?
Yeah, we were sitting around having a drink on the patio on the deck.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the loudest noise you could possibly imagine just scared the daylights out of us. And it turns out that, well, next to our house is a huge old eucalyptus tree that we wanted to have taken down for some time, but the costs were absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
At one point, they were talking about something like $30,000 to bring in a crane and, all of that kind of stuff. So we didn't do it. Well, anyway, it came down like you wouldn't believe. And it took out not only all of our power lines, but it snapped the power poles. So it took them a few days to get rid of a huge amount of debris and to replace the entire pole. To restring the electric and the internet. And you'd think, okay, no problem. We don't have any power. We don't have any internet. It'll be nice and relaxing and we'll go back to the way it was and the years go by. But you know what? We really miss that connectivity.
Yes.
When you can't chat with people, you can't deal with the stuff. You feel completely at bay. And we did for almost 3 days. But anyway, we're back up and everything's fine.
Good. So you had to endure candles and no air conditioning in what is a hot part of the country in a hot time of year?
Yeah. Well, fortunately, we have a generator.
Oh,
so
right.
We're able to generate power, but we couldn't get on the internet.
Yes. And your car was trapped in the...
Yeah, we couldn't get out because of the blockage from the tree. We live up in the mountains a little bit, not deep in the mountains, but in the mountains away. So we don't always have the internet, the data either. So we can sometimes get out a phone call and get data, and sometimes you can't. It's sketchy.
Yes. Well, I pretty much know where you live because I used to visit some friends at Los Altos, and they also had a house on the coast at tell me the name of the coastal town right near you.
Santa Cruz.
That's the one, Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
They had a seafront house there. So we used to go between the two houses, Los Altos and Santa Cruz. And that involves driving past your neck of the woods, literally neck of the woods.
Yep.
Yeah. And you haven't had a lot of luck there, have you, really? Because last year you were evacuated.
Yeah, it's been a tough couple of years with regard to that. We were evacuated for 11 days because of California fires. Although the man running for governor of California, if we unseat our present governor, which they're trying to do in a recall election, he says that climate warming is a total crock. So if that's true, then I don't know why we're having all of these problems. But we had the huge fire, of course, and we were evacuated for 11 days. And several years before that, we live right on the river. And living on the river is great. Living in the river is not so great. And we were also flooded out at that time. So between fires and floods and falling trees, it's been a little bit dicey.
Yes. Do you think anybody's got it in for you?
Apparently, I mean, you know, he seems to be paying a lot more attention to the football games in the area, because several of the recent games that the players said, well, it was because of God that they won, so we would assume that,
Okay.
he's responsible for everything, and was probably, apparently was paying more attention to the football games than he was to our condition.
Well, his ways are mysterious.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Very.
Hey, listen, I know you are a fan of cricket too.
Yeah,
because
I am.
we've talked about that, and you've been in this country and taken in some matches, I dare say. So perhaps you don't know that we've now got a new format. It's called the 100.
I do know.
Do you? Yes. Well, there's 8 teams,
right,
and they go through playing each other, and then there's a quarterfinal, and well, they're almost at the quarterfinal stage when they start, aren't they? So there's semi-finals, and then there's a final, and the final is on now.
Yeah, I've been watching some of it.
Have you?
As it goes along, yeah. And
yes.
I watched the test match with India the last few days, which did not turn out too well for England. But
I'm afraid.
I was at Cambridge a number of years back.
Yeah.
And that's when I first saw cricket. And I remember going to the Cambridge grounds. I'm a baseball fan. I know baseball very well. I played it all of my life.
And you write books about it.
And I write books about it. So I know baseball. So I went to the cricket match, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to learn cricket by watching it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'd go to game after game, and I decided after a while, absolutely impossible. I didn't know what the heck was going on half the time. Guys were changing sweaters and jumping up and down, yelling, "How's it?" And it just didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I finally had to buy a book.
Yes.
And learn the rules. But I've been a cricket fan ever since.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's got some funny customs. It goes back a long way.
Yeah.
And we bowl a maiden over and things like that.
I know.
Yeah.
And a lot of strange terms like googlies and
yes, that's right. Yes. Yes. The latest one is the knuckleball.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, which is unexpectedly slow.
Yeah.
From a fast bowler. Yeah.
Right.
But the thing about the 100 is it's all compressed into a short period of time. You just get 100 balls in 25 ball overs. But because it's so short and compressed, everybody's really going for it. You know, it's all cavalier stuff. It's much more like baseball in that respect.
Yeah. Every
ball is attempted to be hit to the boundary. And you see all of the fantastic athleticism. It's almost as if you're watching the highlights of a whole day's play in a test match, you know? Yeah. But it's live.
That sort of thing has been coming for a while with 2020 and
yes,
and the shorter versions of the game that are obviously very popular.
Yeah, yes. Well, I think they finally hit the right formula now because not only it's a bit shorter than the 2020s, obviously, but they also play 2 matches in one session. So you get the women's side, they have their contest, and then that's in the afternoon. Then in the evening, you get the men's side. So it's a concentrated event, and there's something for all the family. And it's very high tech as well. We get all the flames in the sky for sixes and all of the large screen displays, and you see the close-ups because there's cameras everywhere, and many of them are robot cameras, and so there's even cameras on the hats of the batsmen. So it's really a very involving experience.
Yeah, it's great. There's also something appealing about Test cricket, though. It's a different game. I mean, it's clearly a different game. But the idea of the strategy and the movement and the pacing and the time it takes and the discipline it takes to stay at bat for hours and hours and hours is pretty amazing. Yes, it's unlike any other sport.
Well, that's right. Yeah, it's the only sport where you stop for lunch and tea and go on for up to 5 days. Yeah. It's more like a war.
Yeah.
But it's attrition, isn't it? That's a slow, careful game, unlike this short-term one.
Yeah. It can turn so bloody quick. It can turn so quickly. I mean, a player can be in for a century, 110 even, and then all of a sudden he loses his wicket, and then 5 wickets fall in succession,
Yes.
and the game just completely shifts. It's amazing.
Yes, it can be quite an edge of the seat experience. Yeah. So you can start writing about cricket now.
I'm not, but I actually have thought a couple of times about doing a book on cricket for baseball fans. And drawing some parallels and doing some of that. My agent's not sure exactly who would read it, but it seems like it might be a fun book to write.
Yeah, cricket for Americans. There is an American side.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
There are leagues around here. People play around here a little bit. Not
yes, of course, you've got the English Canton in California, haven't you?
Yeah. Up in Palo Alto they play.
Yeah. So that would be a place to go to watch it. Yeah. Mm. Anyway, enough rabbiting about games. Tell me the question, the answer to the question that I give to all my guests. How did you become an atheist?
I wish I had an incredible story to tell you about some miraculous bolt of lightning that came down and struck me, and all of a sudden I saw the light of day. But it wasn't that at all, really. I grew up in a family that wasn't very religious. My mother went to church on Sundays. My father dropped me off at Sunday school when I was growing up, and then went to the local pub and waited for the Sunday school to be out and took me home. And, like a lot of other kids, I listened to the stories of Noah's Ark and, all these fairy tales. And, I was sort of into it a little bit. And then when I got a little bit older, we had a group in our church called Christian Endeavor, which is an organization that's fairly prevalent in the United States. And I was in Christian Endeavor, and I was president of Christian Endeavor, not because I was endeavoring to be a Christian, but because I had the hots for the girl who was the vice president of Christian Endeavor. And that was absolutely why I stayed with that. But then, of course, when you go to college and you realize that scientific thinking and rationality and reasonable approach to the world makes far more sense than anything else, I sort of glided away from any pretense I had to religion. I remember my father died before that, and I remember I used to have some thoughts, well, I'll meet him someday in heaven, and we'll talk about baseball, because he was a big baseball fan. And then, you realize a little bit later, no, that's not really going to happen. And my father's gone, and I'm not going to have that conversation with baseball. And it was college that really turned me completely around. But I sort of pretended for a little while, like a lot of people do, because my wife was Catholic, and rather a strict Catholic, and I didn't want to create any more friction than need be. So I kind of said, "Oh yeah, I see what you're saying, yeah." But she also drifted away, and now she's a dyed-in-the-wool atheist as much as I am, or more so. And that made it a lot easier for me, because then I didn't have to go around sort of semi-pretending. No. So that's my story. It's nothing special, just gradual realizing that the world works according to the laws of science and rationality, and that's the case. I mean, one can easily understand why people many, many, many years ago believed in magic of gods. Well, it made a lot of sense. The sun is moving across the sky. What's making it move? We can't see anything. There's some unforeseen source making it move. It must be some kind of a divine figure. And I'm sure if both of us were born a few thousand years ago, we probably would have believed that.
We would have been worshipping Ra.
Exactly. But now we know a lot more, and we know why the sun is moving, or appears to be moving, across our sky, and that explains that. So that's one less reason that they're to believe in God, and of course a lot more others.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm like you in that I have a sort of boring journey, if you pardon my saying so, out of. Well, I never got into a religion, so I didn't have to get out of it. My parents also were not religious people. I didn't go to a particularly religious school. It was called a C of E school, Church of England school. But of course, as you know, the Church of England is very much a lukewarm religion. You don't have to believe much to be in it. You just go along and keep the peace, as you were saying. But I'd also like to meet my father again, because he and I used to take car engines apart and rebuild gearboxes and all sorts of things like that, because he was an engineer who built fighter aircraft in the war. But it's not going to happen, is it? I'd love to be able to show him modern cars, because he died almost 20 years ago now. So there were pretty much certainly no touchscreen phones, and satellite navigation hadn't come into the car market in this country at that stage. And the idea of a voice being able to tell you where to turn, and when you're at your destination, he wouldn't have had a clue as to how that could have been done.
Yeah.
It would have boggled his mind, despite the fact that he knew exactly how an engine worked and could rebuild it. But of course, nowadays we don't even open the bonnet. So that's
Right.
how different the world has become since he left us. Yeah. So, Atheist Alliance International. As I said earlier, I was a former member of the board. So I know something about what it gets up to. But in my new role as president of Atheism UK, I've been asked by my council members, because Atheism UK is affiliated, it's one of the affiliates of Atheist Alliance International. I've been asked, what's in it for us? How do we benefit by being affiliated to AAI? Is that a question you could answer?
It's a question I'll be glad to answer, but I don't have a complete answer that you want. I wish I did. We're moving towards that more and more. I don't want to go back through a lot of history of AAI, but it's a different organization today than it was when you first joined.
Yes.
Things change. Things evolve. You may have heard of the theory of evolution. It's fairly popular these days. Things change. And we are not the organization we were when I joined. We're not the organization we were. You were in the organization even before I was. It's not the same organization. It was then an organization of affiliates. And the affiliates had their position, their take on what they wanted us to do. We found in 2018 that the affiliates were not being terribly responsive to our requests or to anything really. So we changed the position a little bit and made them less viable in the organization. We've since changed that back. They now have the right to vote for board members, to approve the bylaws, and do all the things that one would expect of a democratic, not-for-profit organization. So it's all there. We are working very hard, and almost as we speak, on what more can we do for affiliates? How can we be more valuable for affiliates? You have to say that we have two different kinds of affiliates. You are one kind, Atheist UK, in that you're an established, ongoing organization in a Western country. We also have organizations who are less formal, less official, can't speak out so much because of the countries in which they live.
Yeah.
And they need our assistance in different ways. They need our assistance in perhaps getting set up. They may need our assistance in getting internet access, and we are helping a number of them do that. We're helping them set up, and some of this was your idea, by the way, I might add, that we've picked up on. Yeah. We're helping some of them get websites up and running, and those things that they need that you don't need as Atheism UK so much as some of the groups do.
Well, I appreciate that. And I also believe that you are acting on behalf of the wider non-belief community at the UN. Can you tell us a bit about that, maybe?
At the UN? Yeah, we're the only atheist organization that has consultative privileges. We keep saying to the UN, it's actually to the Human Rights Council at
UNHCR.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we appear there. I have appeared there on a couple of occasions. And have been advocating for the right to be secular, which I'll be glad to go into if you want to talk about that at any length.
Sure.
If not, then we can move on. But the right to be secular is an important part of our programming. We have received some criticism for it. I disagree with the criticism. I don't think the criticism takes into account the reality of the situation. Here's in brief. I won't go into great detail, but in brief, here's where the UN is. They have, since the UN human rights documents were first created in 1948 by Eleanor Roosevelt and others.
Yeah, wonderful lady.
Yeah, a brilliant lady, absolutely. Since then, they have added significant language to their instruments that does acknowledge the rights of non-believers to be non-believers. And so some people criticize us saying, well, you don't understand. The United Nations already admits that there is a thing called non-belief, and they are protected by human rights declarations. We're not disagreeing with that. Obviously, that is true. We acknowledge that. We accept that. However, let's look at that a little closer. If we look at all the various instruments that the United Nations puts out, they specifically indicate what the rights of the religious are. I won't go through all of them, but let me just identify just a couple to give you an example of the types of things that they indicate specifically. They indicate that the religious have the right to worship or assemble in connection with a religious belief. They can maintain and establish appropriate humanitarian institutions. They can write, issue, and disseminate relevant publications in these areas. They have the right to teach a religion or belief in places suitable for these purposes. They have the right to solicit and receive voluntary financial and other contributions from individuals and institutions, and I could go on and on. There's a list of things that they are specifically granted. There is nothing specifically granted to those people who don't have any belief.
Yeah.
All we are asking for is nothing more. We're not denying the rights of the religious in any way. But in fact, we support them. They should have those rights. Absolutely. If you're a believer, then you should have the right to enjoy your religion. But we're asking for some specific things here that parallel the rights of the religious.
Yeah.
We're asking the right not to be coerced or presumed to adopt a belief, to have to practice a religion, to behave or dress according to religious precepts, to identify with any faith, to belong to a religious community, organization, or association, to adopt religious ceremonies associated with births, deaths, or other life events, or to be registered in official documents as members of a religion. We're just asking that those rights parallel the rights of the religious, and they should be there. And we have a petition out online, and we have thousands and thousands of people who have signed it from all over the world. I think I counted last time something like 68 different countries, some of which I didn't even know were countries. And people have written in saying, what a fabulous thing to do. It's great. It's about time. We're non-believers. We should have those rights as well. So that's what the right to be secular is about. Now, the criticism that sometimes comes our way is, well, the United Nations shouldn't be in the position of protecting the rights of specific groups, but they should be rights that are attendant to everybody in the world, except they already have the rights of specific groups, and rightfully so. People with handicaps, certain minorities, refugees. There are all sorts of specific groups that have rights identified specifically, and that's all we're asking for, that the non-believers have the rights that the other people have.
Well, children, for example, they have specific rights. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, the thing is that these rights that are denied people in theocratic countries, they should be universal. It's just a case of parity. At the moment, the UNHCR seems to be biased towards theisms.
No question about it. I mean, if you look at who's the president and the people that are in charge of it, they're almost all from strongly religious countries. And they do protect the religious. There's no question about it.
Yes. Well, more power to your elbow, Howard. That's got to stop.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And we're continuing to press this forward.
Yes.
And I hope we will have some success someday. Whether the United Nations ever adopts our language that we're asking into their instruments, I don't know. We would hope so. It will probably take years.
Yes.
But we hope that they do. And if not, then at least we can have people signing on to it from all over the world, and
Yes.
various other agencies as well. It doesn't have to be the United Nations.
Yeah. So you could give me a link that I could put in the details underneath this broadcast when it becomes a podcast.
Sure.
To the signing
Sure.
opportunity.
Would love to. Would love to.
Good. So, other aspects of atheism. What do you think about what do you think about the situation regarding blasphemy?
Situation is terrible, as you probably know. Blasphemy is. I mean, I would like to say it shouldn't be. It shouldn't exist.
Laws against it, you mean?
The laws against it, yeah.
Yes.
It should be possible to speak one's mind without having those things having to go to be sanctioned for those. I don't know if you read recently. There was I just saw this week. I think there was a child in Afghanistan before the Taliban
Yes.
Took over, who 8 years old.
Yes, I think that was Pakistan.
Pakistan. I'm sorry, you're right. Who urinated apparently on a carpet in some institution, in some building that was thought to be a religious building.
He was scared, I think. That was why.
Yeah. And because he did that, he was imprisoned, 8 years old, imprisoned for blasphemy.
But they have released him. I think they've stepped back from that because of the outcry.
Yeah, they have.
So,
but it's just an example of what blasphemy.
Yes.
The extent to which blasphemy can be.
So, isn't it the case that AAI, Atheism Alliance International, has a birthday coming up?
We have our 30th birthday arriving. We don't know the exact date, but we're assuming September. We are going to do a celebration. The idea of a celebration came to us from somebody named John Richards. You may know him whilst he was on our board. And we have picked up that idea, and we will be staging a celebration. I'm not sure the details of it yet. We haven't worked out everything, but we have someone on our board who is in charge of making the arrangements for the celebration and doing that. And 30 years is a long time.
Yes.
For a nonprofit organization to be in existence. We have had our ups and downs, as you well know.
Yes.
We have come under attack, if you use that word in the literal sense of the word. We've certainly been criticized by others for what we've done, or what they think we've done, or what they think we haven't done.
Well, it's very difficult in this woke era not to get criticized, even if you haven't done something. They like to pick on some sort of tiny thing and magnify it into something of importance.
Yeah, the woke issue has bedeviled us from the start. We have lost a number of people on our advisory board. We've lost a number of directors because of allegations, unproven as they are, and they continue to surface. It's a difficult world in that respect.
Yeah. So how about, I was thinking in my new role of Atheism UK, I was thinking of offering to host an event to celebrate AAI's birthday, but I see you've already got that in hand.
No, listen, let's I will have our person on our board contact you about that. That would be great.
I'm thinking, because I do these shows every week, as you know, and the original date that we had earmarked for when I was with you for the celebration was the Saturday, the 23rd of October,
right.
the weekend before Halloween.
Yeah.
And the reason that we came up with that date was twofold. It was because that was when the organization was registered in California. Was it California at that time, or
yeah,
it was registered somewhere in the US?
Yeah, California.
And it was close to that date. But also, that is the date on which, according to Archbishop Usher of fame, Irish fame,
right.
calculated that the world began.
Right.
It was the Sunday, actually, not the Saturday, but that's the same weekend. So that was when we were originally proposing to host this event. Now, I could put to my council the idea that we should spring a surprise party on you and host an online event where we drink to celebrate the great age of AAI and light a candle to a secular world or something like that. And we could invite other atheist groups from wherever, because between us we have a lot of connections.
I think it's a fabulous idea, John.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we need to cooperate more with atheist organizations, need to cooperate more with other atheist organizations.
Yes.
I need not tell you, I don't know how much you want to get into this, but I need not tell you that atheist organizations often fight with other atheist organizations.
Tell me about it.
We're not the first, nor will we be the last.
No.
Is there something inherent in the idea of being a person that espouses atheism or free thinking, a free thought person, that engenders arguments with other free thought people? I don't know. Maybe there is. I haven't been able to figure out what that would be if that's the case. But you would think that when I mention this to friends sometimes, we're having these arguments or these debates, and they immediately assume we're debating some church group who's upset that we're insisting on the separation of church and state in some ways that they find offensive or something. And I said, no, we're not. We don't fight with people in religion. We argue with atheists.
Yes.
I'm not sure why.
Well,
you talk about that?
It's an odd thing, isn't it? Yeah. I suspect it's because since we haven't been herded, we have not been required to comply with a doctrine. Right. So we tend to be more individualists. And as a result of which, we're not sheep, we're more like goats, and so we're all our own leaders, and we don't want to follow.
Yeah, I suppose that's true.
Well, I don't know, I made it up.
I think that's probably true. But, you asked about how old we are, and I say, well, we're talking about 30 years old. And I said we're a different organization, but we're really in many ways in very good shape right now.
Good, yeah.
We have more members than we think we've ever had.
Yeah.
We have more affiliates than we think we've ever had.
Yeah.
We have created an advisory council that we never had before. We have created new members' policies and handbooks that we give to people to make sure that we're all operating in an ethical and a reasonable way. We have created a transparency guide. GuideStar now rates us, not rate you, they don't rate you. They give you a seal. We have a seal of a platinum seal, which means that we're highly transparent in what we do.
Yep.
We are running campaigns all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
We have set up internet cafes in 2 European countries where people don't have access to the internet.
Mm-hmm.
We have worked on blasphemy cases around the world. Mubarak Bala, as you know, is the most celebrated case. He's still in jail, and we are still supporting his wife with a monthly stipend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I'm pleased to hear that things are going on so well. And I understand, Frank here has agreed with my analysis. I'm not a psychologist, Frank. I just made it up.
Yeah.
Frank is one of our regular viewers. He's in the Kentucky area.
Oh, right.
Not far from the famous Noah's Ark exhibition.
Right.
Well, I say not far, not far in the American sense of probably within a day's drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know you've got some more new directors that have slotted in. So can you tell me a bit about they?
Yeah, we have a director from Nigeria, Ebuka. He's an attorney in Nigeria, and has been working on various issues in Nigeria. The worship center that we put a fair amount of money into trying to get the government to stop building.
Yes.
We have Stella, who is new to the board and extremely active campaigner for many years. She's in Australia, and she's new on the board. Who else we've had several others. I'd have to look at the notes again. I've forgotten, but this just happened within the last couple of weeks. But they've also been very active on the board in recent months. And then before them, we added some people who have been really active in South America, where AAI has been virtually without representation for a long time. But now we have a board member, Shirley, who's been fabulous in working with groups in South America.
Great. Excellent.
It's hard to maintain stability, as you know, in groups. None of us are paid. Obviously, we don't, not a penny. There's nothing in it for us except, and I'm sorry if I don't mean to sound goody-goody, but we do this because we think we can make a difference. There was no other reason to do it. Nobody's going to pay us. Nobody's going to put up monuments to us. Nobody's going to strike medals in our honor. We're not going to win awards. Well, maybe some people, Richard Dawkins and some of the people at the very top of the tree might win awards. But those of us working on the ground, we get nothing other than the satisfaction of helping others. I know it's a cliche to say we work to make the world a little bit better place, but it's exactly what we're doing. Are we making a huge difference? No, we're not. Are we making a little difference? Yes, we are. And little differences add up. It's the same thing as saying to people in the environmental movement, well, I don't know why I should not recycle my used milk cartons. How much can that possibly help the world? Well, every little bit helps the world. And every little bit that we can do to help atheists in jeopardy around the world is an advantage. And that's our payoff. That's our only payoff. That's all we get out of it. That's all we want out of it. That's all we ask. Yeah,
I agree wholeheartedly. Because as you know, I've got my second family, I've got some children who are still at school. And the eldest one, she's going to be 14 at the beginning of October. So she is beginning to come to understand exactly how cuffed up the world is. And everywhere you look, there's something that's not perfect. There's some atrocity or some heinous activity going on that is undesirable. And when you start to realize that, you've got to make a choice. Are you going to be an activist? Or are you just going to sit back and gripe about it? And some years ago, I chose the activist route. I became a minor politician in the hope of improving the situation in local government here. And I did that for 10 years. Then I lost my seat. Well, I was, what's the expression? Not gazumped. What's the expression for having your ward manipulated so that you don't win it? It's named gerrymandering. Yeah, it's named after the American politician Gerrymander, who was very good at it. Yes. So that's what happened to me. I was gerrymandered out of existence. But never mind. I moved on. There are other things to do, and so I became active in. I like to think of myself as continuing my trade as a science teacher. I'm retired from that job, but I still that's my mission. I still want people to understand more about science. So I've been doing that. I've been promoting science, which of course means that people lose their faith. So that's how I got involved with the atheist movement, because it's a side effect of teaching science.
Sure.
People lose their faith.
Absolutely. I got involved after I like you, I'm an academic. I taught at the university level for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally retired, I said, now I have the time to give back in other ways. I think I gave back as a teacher.
Oh, yes. Yes.
But when I was retired, I wasn't doing that any longer. And so I was looking for some way to give back. And I thought, well, I need to do something in which I completely believe.
Yes.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to get involved in something that you're sort of half-hearted about. And you think, well, okay. And I thought, well, no, what I could really get behind is the movement for secularism around the world. And so that's what I've done as a conscious attempt to try to make a difference.
Yes. Well, you're right. What you just said makes a lot of sense, because if you're doing something in which you don't really believe, that's a job. That's what you do to get paid.
Right.
You don't really believe it. It's somebody else's business. It's somebody else's organization. Except teaching is a bit of an exception, isn't it? Where you do need to be passionate about it. Otherwise, it's such a tough job. You'd probably do something easier.
Yeah. The other day, I got an email from a person who said, I was one of your students and you made such a difference in my life. And I'm now living near you. Could we get together for coffee?
Oh,
and,
that's lovely.
To tell you the truth, I thought, I don't even remember who this person is.
I know.
I had thousands of students in my career.
Yes.
And so I said, oh, of course. I would love to see you again.
Yes.
And trying to rack my brains as to who exactly she was. And then we did meet for coffee about a week ago. And she said, you told me some things that were so important in my life. Remember when you said so-and-so and such and such? And I didn't. But I was, the fact is that I clearly did make a difference in at least that person's life.
Yes, that's right.
And presumably others as well. Not all. I had students who sat in the back of my class and I'm sure couldn't wait to get out. And there were many of those as well. But we do as teachers get to some of our students in ways that are profound and that are life-changing. And that's what we attempt to do. I always told my students that my job is to give you tools.
Yes.
I'm not giving you facts.
No.
I'm not telling you what's right and wrong about history or literature. I was teaching literature, or why this is a good book or why this is a poor book or anything. But I'm going to try to give you tools so that you can read those books on your own. I would do the same thing if I were teaching science. I want to give you the tools for rational thinking, for analysis, for determining causality and other things. These are tools. So when I used to say as a teacher, I'm a tool teacher. That's what I do. I teach tools. When people say to me, oh, you're a university professor, what do you teach? They always expect me to say math or science or something. I'd say, no, I teach tools. What are you talking about? I teach people how to do and approach various things, mostly literature.
Well, it's rare when it happens, but it's lovely, isn't it, when somebody thanks you or remembers you even. And you're correct. I get stopped in the street occasionally by people who call me Mr. Richards, and when I last saw them, they were, probably that high. And now they're taller than me, and I don't remember them at all.
Right, exactly.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah.
But as we were saying, if you don't have to do something to earn money, then what you do is what you want to do with a passion. That's when you choose to become active, and there's so much that needs activism today in the world. I was admiring some of the young ladies because they never used to have a very high profile. But look, we've got Malala Yousafzai. We've got what's her name? The Swedish climate changer. Begins with a G.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And these young ladies have a voice, and they speak so much sense. and people didn't used to listen to them. But now they have a platform, they have a microphone, they have a camera, and they're everywhere, and it's great.
Now there's another problem with women now, even bigger, as you know, Afghanistan.
Yes, yes.
The voices of millions of women are going to be cut off.
Well, it's interesting because I've been following Afghanistan because of my Global Atheist News show, which is a weekly show that just preceded this one.
Right.
And it's come to my notice that there's an area in North Afghanistan where there's a group of women who have become quite militant. You know, they're toting arms and they're saying that they're going to resist the Taliban because, of course, they've had 20 years of a liberal regime.
Yeah.
They didn't have to go about in burqas. They were allowed out on their own without a man. And they don't want to give that up overnight.
Yeah.
So I don't think that the Taliban is going to find it quite so easy to re-establish the old regime style that they had before as they imagine.
I hope you're right. Will they listen to influence from outside their country?
I fear that might be cut off. Greta Thunberg. That's the name. Yes, yes, yes. So these are lovely young ladies who we want to see more of.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Howard, if I could give you a magic wand, what would you wish for?
How many wishes do I have?
Let's say 3, shall we?
All right. I want the Dodgers to win the World Series.
Okay.
Because I'm a baseball fan, and that's important.
Yes, okay.
And we were talking about fathers earlier because it goes back to my relationship with my father, and
yes,
and those things. So that's important.
Mm.
There's going to be no surprise here. I don't have any secret things to suggest, but other than to say, the world is becoming less religious all the time.
It is.
That's a fact.
Certainly in the Western.
Yeah, in the Western world, and maybe elsewhere as well, but not as fast.
Yes.
And not as predominantly.
Yes.
Church membership in the United States, according to a very, very recent Pew poll, was in 1950 it was 76%. In 2020 it was 47%. So the numbers are going up. So if I were wishing for anything, I would wish that religion would either disappear or become less important, much less influential than it is now. It's happening. When people ask sometimes, does religion make the world better or worse? The answer is, in the long run, it makes the world worse. Which is not to say there aren't some good things that religion has done.
No,
historically, it has, and there is, and today there's still some value, and mostly in a social connection for people in religion and that sort of thing. But on the whole, if you're balanced in history,
exactly. Yes.
Bad? Have they done more? Has it done more good than harm? The answer is absolutely no. This thing's called witchcraft and crusades and I don't know. It goes on and on and on and on and on.
On that subject, the witchcraft, the UNHCR has just adopted a resolution.
Yeah, I saw that.
To urge states to be against witchcraft. Yeah. Because it's still prevalent in India, northern Nigeria, and I'm sure other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And it's horrible stuff. Yeah. Albinos get abused.
I've got my third wish. Wait a minute, I got a third wish. Not done.
I interrupted you. Go ahead.
That's right. You said 3. I'm going to go for 3.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The idea, and I've lost track of where I was going with this. That I wish rationality would replace not just religious faith, but doctrinaire positions all over the world. I mean, obviously in the United States, we had the Trump years, and Trump was clearly did not operate in and a reasonable ratiocination was not part of his process. He didn't think through things carefully. He kept saying, he kept implying, if I keep saying things that are clearly wrong, are clearly lies, people will eventually believe that. Well, if more people looked at it in a rational and a reasonable way, they would see that that's not true. Trump could say, I won the election. No, Donald, you didn't. Oh, not only won it, but I won it by a landslide. No, you didn't. Not only I won it by a landslide, I won it by more than any president has ever won an election. He has said all of those things over and over and over and over again. Okay, give him that. The guy's capable. The guy's incapable of rational thought. But the problem is other people then buy into that. That is the problem. Trump is not so much the problem. It's the people who are supporting him that are the core of the problem. So my third wish is that people would become more rational, more reasonable, have more ability to look at an argument for what it is and for what it isn't.
Yeah. Well, it was Goebbels, wasn't it, who said, the Nazi propagandist who said that if you tell a lie often enough, people think it's true.
Right.
At least it's attributed to him. I couldn't. That probably needs a fact check.
Yeah.
But you're right. It all comes back down to education, doesn't it? This is where we came in, isn't it? If you've got an ignorant electorate, then you get ignorant results of an election.
Right.
So we need to further the public understanding of science and logic and rational thinking, and just be reasonable rather than doctrinaire.
I couldn't agree with you more.
So, a secular world, that's the way forward with good education. People ask me sometimes about other countries where the situation is a bit different. They say something like, if you don't have my religion, because they're not interested in promoting some other person's religion. Right. If you don't have my religion, where does your morals come from?
Right.
And I point to the fact that the countries which have the least criminality, the least bad behavior, are countries which are most atheistic.
Yes.
There are countries including the Scandinavian countries, Canada, Australia, Japan. These are the places where the correlation is opposite to what the theist would like. It's the least religion, the least bad behavior, the most sociable community, culture, and nationality.
Obviously, there are many people who do not believe the next thing I'm going to say, but I do. I don't understand why anyone who has a reasonable degree of education in the sciences can possibly still adhere to religious dogma. I know they do. Clearly, millions of people do. It just doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Well, again, I have a theory about that. I think it's because they're got at when they're young. And these ideas are inserted into their heads. And when you get something that early, it's difficult to shift it. And I meet a lot of people who had that sort of upbringing and had to undergo a terrible deconversion later in life when they realized how they'd been deceived.
Yeah. A lot of people who want to leave religion completely behind don't do it because they think it's dishonoring their family. They think they're dishonoring their mother and father who told them that this is the way the world is. And I can't. I'm just not being faithful to my parents if I don't believe that, which is wrong. But that's the way a lot of people think.
We've moved on. Every generation knows a bit more than the previous one, and we can't blame them for their not knowing. And I'm sure their intentions were the best for us. So I don't want to blame them.
What's going to happen in 2000? Posit 2,000 years ahead. 2,000 years from now, religion is going to be around for sure, but it's likely to be a niche sort of a thing. like people go to poetry readings or something. There are still people go to poetry readings, but poetry readings aren't a big thing. I think there's still going to be people doing religion, but I don't think it's going to be the dominant force in the world anymore.
Well, I hope you're right.
I do too.
I'd like to see it become as incredible, as anti-credible as astrology, as horoscopes, you know, because they're a bit of fun, aren't they? But everybody knows they're not real.
Right.
That's a good situation to be in.
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to announce my next guest for next week, because he's a very interesting fellow who has had a journey, unlike you and I. He was the son of a Plymouth Brethren couple. You know, that's one of the more extreme, can't use the word cult. What do you call them? That's
splinter religion?
Yeah, okay, could be. It's one of the subsects of Christianity, isn't it? Yeah. And his parents were not only Plymouth Brethren people, but they became missionaries and went to Zambia, taking him with them, and where he was raised, and raised in a very religious circumstance. And subsequently, he's back in this country now, and he's deconverted, and he's now a campaigning atheist. His name's Matthew Taylor, and he's my guest next week. He's got a very interesting story to tell. Everybody should tune in to hear his journey.
Sounds interesting.
So we're being thanked. Frank is giving us some applause. Thank you, Frank. And I'd like to thank you, Howard. You've been as fantastic as predicted. And I'd like to wish you and Atheist Alliance International all the best for the future. And I'll definitely look into seeing if we can host, or you've put me in touch with your guy, and we'll work together to see if we can do something to celebrate the 3rd decade of existence of AAI.
Well, thank you, Mr. Richards. I have thoroughly enjoyed. I always enjoy chatting with you. It's been a delight. Thanks again.
Yeah, likewise. Me too. Thank you, Howard.
You bet. Cheers.
Thank you for watching, guys. Bye-bye.